And as scheduled, we welcome in Bills Radio Network color analyst Eric Wood, former Bills center and also host of the Centered on Buffalo podcast. And Eric's appearance is presented by Campbell's Chunky Soup. Big, craveable favorites collide in Chunky Soup's new Mac line featuring flavors like Buffalo-style Chicken Mac, Chili Dog Mac, and Beefy Mac. Stock up for game day now at your local Wegmans. Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal. All right, Eric. Wild game again this week, much like last week. Every bit as wild and every bit as much of a second-half comeback effort as we have seen from this team, which is kind of becoming par for the course. Dangerous way to live, but what can be said about the steely resolve of this battle-hardened Bills team?
Yeah, it shows incredible resiliency when you're willing to do that. As you were talking about the last two broadcasts, I'd love to go back and just kind of hear our tone throughout the broadcast change as the trajectory of the game goes. But that being said, they're making plays down the stretch. The defense has played extremely well in the second half for a majority of this season, but really these last two games making plays down the stretch, and then the offense has come alive too. It's obviously not the way you want to play. You want to start fast. You want to jump on teams. You want to have that win probability be in your favor throughout, but proving to yourself as a team that you can win games like this is valuable. And so this team, Josh Allen said it afterwards, we didn't blink, and they don't, because in their mind, it started with week one. They're never dead. They can come back at any point. Now, like I said, we're getting pretty close to elimination time come playoff time. You don't want to live and die by that, but having a team full of guys that understands that no matter what the circumstances are of the game, we're not out of it. Just stick with the plan, start making plays, obviously, and get it righted. But if we can make the adjustments, even if we fall down really far behind, you have the horses to make it back up.
Yeah, and they fell behind early mostly because, in my view, they started the game with 2 3-and-outs, and I mean fast 3-and-outs, and then they had a ball for 1:14 on their first drive. And then they had an 8-play drive for 29 yards, and they punted it away. So they started with 3 straight punts to start the game. And we had one caller today, and I and I agree. It was, the Bills were trying a lot of things. And I get it. When Joe Brady starts this game, you have some stuff scripted. And the results of those plays, not the results so much, but the defensive front that you face and their tactics against you, tell you what to do going forward and tell you what they think of your offense. So I get some of that. But man, oh man, even so, it didn't seem like the Bills were inept offensively. It just seems like, the bobbled pass to Cooks down the sideline, a false start on Palmer in the slot, and all of a sudden it's 2 series, 3 and out, and you're 14 points down. But the offense really didn't even have a chance to get on the rails.
No, you're right. And me and Chris talked about it yesterday. Our margin for error with the talent on this roster right now, with the amount of injuries that we have across the board, the margin for error is not that high to where when Joe Brady scripts up a perfect play call on the first play of the game where New England thinks the Bills are going to establish the run. They got the number 1 rushing attack in the NFL. You get heavy personnel. They shift from, I believe it was an empty set, or they shift from a spread out set into a condensed set. Everybody in the stadium thinks that the Bills are about to run the football, and then they get their shot one-on-one with Cooks on the crossing route running away from the defensive back. Those are the plays you just got to make right now. We're not making them. And then on their first possession, the ball hits the turf. They get on the football. Sean McDermott said he didn't have, a view of it. And, everyone's giving Sean McDermott a lot of flack for not challenging that. And Max Harrison maybe didn't have a good view of it. But at times as a coach, you need your player in that situation. I'd assume they're telling Max, you got to get your head around on that to help me out from the opposite side, because we're playing on the road here. The New England operators in the stadium, they're not going to put that up on the screen for the head coach to get a look at it. And John Perry obviously didn't have a look at it in the booth either to be able to call down. But, those are big time swings early in the game. That's going to be a 3-and-out to start the game for New England. And it's going to put the Bills down close to the red zone, where they ended up going 5 for 5 in the red zone. They actually technically went 5 for 6, but you had the kneel down at the end. So to me, everything went wrong early on and obviously hurt themselves with that offsides, put themselves in tough positions. You're getting some exotic looks from the Patriots. You're not making plays, but give them credit. They adjusted offensively, got back to what they do well, and that's a balanced attack. And I do like when they start to play with some urgency, when they're trying to make their comebacks, they don't completely abandon the run game. That can be a nightmare for an offensive lineman. I've been in those situations many times in my career. It's nice that they're still able to lean into the run game, but you're down 21 points in the second half. You understand there's an urgency that you need to come in and out of the huddle with.
We've seen the last 2 weeks, especially, Eric, this passing game diversify itself and evolve into one that can be very dangerous when targeting tight ends. Last 2 weeks alone, 20 receptions, 207 yards, and 5 touchdowns from the tight ends in the last 2 games alone. What can be said about leaning into that part of their passing game and how much pressure it will put on future opposing defenses to completely shift perhaps their defensive tactics to address this?
Well, I think part of the reason it's been so effective is Joe Brady's doing a great job of mirroring their successful run schemes, exact formations and motions with the play action, which has allowed them to get the defense to bite, to open up some passing lanes. And then guys have simply made plays. You look at that 3rd and 14 yesterday, Josh throws a bullet to Dawson Knox, and that's a heck of a catch by him to take that in for the score. Kincaid had a really difficult catch in the red zone where if he doesn't catch that and he bobbles it, it might be an interception there in the red zone where we might be having a different conversation today. So credit those guys for making plays, but I also think you got to give Joe Brady some credit as well, that as well as they've run the ball out of the 13 personnel, the play action's looking really effective off of it. And when you're looking for answers in the pass game, those have been your answers the last couple of weeks, and you got to continue to lean in that. And then as teams try to take that away, okay, well, is it a little softer where we can run the football more effectively? Is there better matchups on the outside where potentially you can use some speed from Cooks to take the top off the defense? Is there more space on the outside because now teams are going to have to try to take away those tight ends so much in the pass game?
So we had the conversation as well that since the tight ends have been such a big part, and Hawes got into the act yesterday with a 9-yard reception, and he's an elite run blocker as a tight end. We know that. You got Kincaid and Knox. And then there was times, too, we're seeing it more and more where Ty Johnson and James Cook are on the field at the same time. In fact, that's what gave him the first down that iced the game with Ty Johnson on the quick handoff up inside. Having that kind of personnel that is so effective, along with, and what I call, it's still unknown to defenses that the Bills will face, what they can do with Josh Palmer, what they can do with Shavers, with Gabe Davis, with the guys we have, Brandon Cooks, Mecole Hardman is still on the right. I mean, they got a lot of guys that their defenses have not seen. Those wideouts at this point, they don't have to do all that much to affect the way a defense is going to have to play this offense. But and any contributions they can give going forward, it's so late in the season, it's going to have exponential effects on defenses, correct?
Yeah, you would assume so. And I thought Shakir had a great game yesterday. Obviously, he got dinged up. He was dealing with a rib and an ankle. And besides the Houston game, hadn't had a great stretch of production. Now, that's a guy who does all the little things for you out there. But the tackle breaking, the kind of burst that he has out of his routes, it seems like he's getting healthier off that ankle injury. So he had a nice game yesterday. Josh, back to, I always love looking back at after the game, and these aren't all screens to Shakir. These are shots down the field. Had the huge one on 4th down, had a couple across the middle, and Josh is perfect targeting Khalil Shakir, and he's a weapon out of the slot. And then, yeah, ideally you're going to get more production on the outside moving forward, and likely to make a Super Bowl run, you need it. But like you said, more time under task with Josh throwing to Cooks on the outside. Gabe Davis back in the mix. Can you get something from Keon Coleman? Shavers had the explosion of game against the Bucs. Can he have a Gabe Davis, Kansas City playoff type game down the stretch where teams ignore him and then all of a sudden he's making plays down the field? And then Josh Palmer, we saw it on the deep comeback he had yesterday. He makes the DB from New England slip and fall. He does plenty that makes you excited. You just got to keep him on the field consistently. And hopefully him playing last week's a good sign that moving forward, he's going to be available for us.
Flipping it over to the defensive side of the ball, Eric, we've seen this before where the defensive staff huddles up with the defense. They realize how the opposing offense is hurting them and come up with answers that invariably work exceptionally well. And we saw that again yesterday. I think Drake May was as indecisive as perhaps I have ever seen him in his 1+ year of NFL football. And Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott were spinning the dial on him in the second half. I mean, they're running cover 6 one play, then it's cover 4 the next play, cover 2 the next play. I don't know if he got the same look twice through the entire third quarter of that football game. And you pick your head up and you look. First of all, they only had 2 possessions in the third quarter because the Bills were stringing out offensive drives. And second of all, it's a punt and an interception as end results on those third quarter when the game really turned. What can you say about the variance of stuff that Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott threw at Drake May?
Yeah, and that's likely got to be our recipe moving forward, is that variance. I thought the back end of the defense for the most part yesterday was great again, and that's without Christian Benford out there, who'd been playing like one of the best cornerbacks in the entire NFL. I think since the bye week, Tre'Davious White has really played well, and he's had a consistent season overall. Max Hairston has certainly had his highs throughout, his time getting back from the injury, and then the back end at safety has been a lot more consistent with the combination of Poyer Hancock and then this emergence of Cole Bishop. And so give a lot of credit to the back end of that defense in some of its one-on-one matchups, some of its mixing and matching the coverages. And then the variance in the rushes, you get 2 sacks from Matt Milano in this game. You had some pressures that came from just more exotic looks up front. And then the game sealing play, Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau, they both drop into coverage. So we bring 2 interior backers. We drop our defensive ends. New England's trying to run a mesh concept with receivers going across the formation from both directions, and nobody's coming open. And part of the reason is because you have help on both sides from both of your edge rushers, and then Joey Bosa adds and tips that ball away. But if he doesn't tip that ball away, that ball is likely getting batted down. There was tight coverage on the back end of that one. So I think this defense, when you consider the amount of injuries that they've had, especially up front, they got to get creative to get pressure on the quarterback. You're likely not just going to be able to rely on a 4-man rush each and every week. And I've appreciated at times how they've been able to manipulate a pass rush or give confusing looks just based upon the variety that they bring each and every week.
Yeah, one of the things about this D line, certainly they're not the best pass rushing group in the league because they've had injuries, they've had all that rotation. But the one thing they do is, aside from the run game, we saw them snap off a couple of the long run there where they lost contain and all that. But in the pass rush, when they have to stay disciplined in their lanes, when they do that cage rush, they show great discipline in their ability to manipulate a quarterback when job one isn't to get him on the ground, but to contain him, like with Lamar, with all these guys. They seem really disciplined and able to work as a unit, even though the production in sacks isn't there. That may be the only thing they do really well. Like yesterday, when they wanted to keep Drake May from running, yeah, okay, they can do that.
Yeah, they just squeezed the
pocket, got a couple of sacks out of it.
And there's value in that for the back end of the defense. If you're playing different types of zones, those zones get distorted when the quarterback gets out on the move. And so by hemming the quarterback in the pocket, that allows everybody to stay more consistent in their zone coverage. And, when Drake May was ripping off long runs early in the game, you're thinking likely we're going to have to do some type of cage rushing the rest of this game. Moving forward, you hope that Joey Bosa's wrist can heal up because he just hasn't been as effective since he injured that wrist, which when you're out there playing with one hand, that could be extremely difficult. He did make the game-changing sack against the Steelers, but the production's been way down since. I thought Greg Rousseau had a couple nice pass rushes yesterday. One of them, he misses the sack, but it leads to the Milano sack because of the pressure created by Rousseau. But yeah, to your point, you have Ed Oliver and Michael Hoyt out there. This is a totally different game plan come obvious pass rush situations, but I've appreciated how they've leaned into different ways to give different looks up front, maybe bring different guys off the edges or up the middle, and moving forward, continue to lean into that. I don't know if this looks like a Todd Bowles defense by the end of the season where guys are coming from everywhere and you don't know where they're coming from, but I think this has been a kind of a consistent of Sean McDermott and this Bills organization under Sean McDermott is adapting to your talent. I mean, you consider how this offense has evolved over time, and right now the strength of this offense is James Cook, the linemen, your tight ends groups. Okay, we're going to play 13 personnel and 22 personnel. We're going to get really big, and maybe that's the plan heading into the season anyways, but adapting to your talent is one of the best things that you can do as an organization, as a coaching staff. And when you look at this defense right now and you're adapting to some crippling injuries, yesterday when you look at it, Ed Oliver is probably your most disruptive defensive lineman up front. Terrell Bernard, I know Shaq Thompson's having a great season, but overall, coming into the season especially, you'd say Terrell Bernard's your best linebacker, your best second-level player. Your best guy in the secondary, Christian Benford. You're without all three of them. Okay, now we got to get creative, and I know it's an extremely slow start, and I'm not giving this team or this side of the ball a complete pass on giving up 24 points and 285 yards in the first half, but to be able to adapt, to be able to regroup and say, okay, here's how we're going to attack them and to execute it, you can't dismiss that.
Last one for me, Eric, concerns special teams, and for the last month, Ray Davis has led the league in kick return average, and he came up big yesterday, 4 returns for 164 yards, and the huge spark he provided to start the second half. And special teams coordinator Chris Tabor with some wrinkles in the kick return game, making Ray Davis a single returner with an up man. Most of the time it was Reggie Gilliam, but on the 58-yarder to start the second half, it's Alec Anderson. And they completely walled it off and made a difference. What can you say about the wrinkles they put in the return game?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, Ray Davis, you talk about making the most of your opportunities, and James Cook having an absolutely incredible season this year. So he's not getting maybe the carries that he expected coming into the year at the running back position. So he's evolved into maybe the best kick returner in the league. And he's a weapon back there. He truly is. The Bills started, I believe, 3 drives yesterday in Patriots territory because of his kick returns. Now, give credit to Coach Tabor, give credit to the guys blocking. You don't do that by yourself. But Ray Davis, leading the league in kickoff return average, has been a spark for this team. And Josh Allen was asked after the game in his press conference, what was kind of the moment where you felt the momentum start to turn? Well, they're still down 24-7. Josh said the opening kickoff of the second half, the energy that provided. And so give Ray Davis some credit. I'm a huge fan of his. I remember him running a kickoff back in college against my Louisville Cardinals when he was playing against the Kentucky Wildcats. I knew he had it in him. I'm just glad to see him develop into that type of return man here in the pros. I've also seen him in pregame warmups back there with Shakir working on catching punts too. So potentially have that in his future as well.
All right, Eric, Cleveland next up on the thing. Got to go down there. You're going to travel to Cleveland with Brownie here, do the game from Cleveland. An offense that's struggling down there, but certainly a defense led by Myles Garrett, presents all kinds of problems. At 1,000 miles away, what are your thoughts about this next game on the road?
Yeah, you got a team that's eliminated from the playoffs. You got to jump on them early. You don't play with fire here. This is a young football team. They got a bunch of young talent on this team. Don't give Shedeur Sanders, don't give some of these young guys on offense a bunch of confidence. Make them feel early on like we're going to get nothing throughout this game. And then similar to how we were talking about TJ Watt, and even more so going against Myles Garrett, it's all hands on deck. Keep him as well as you can away from Josh. You're going to likely script your run plays depending on where he's at, to where, okay, if we're going to run zone, if he's going to generally be on our right-hand side, and we're going to run zone, he'll generally be on our left-hand side. If we're going to run a zone play, maybe we run it to the left, assuming it's going to cut back. Maybe we run duo to the right, thinking it's going to stay more play side. And you don't want to pigeonhole yourself and make it too easy on the defense and know which way you're going every time. But saw against the Steelers, it worked out pretty well doing that. So he's the type of guy you want to have all hands on deck. Everybody is going to recognize where he's at each and every snap. When we used to play against Aaron Donald, similar to how I would identify the Mike linebacker on every play, I would identify where Aaron Donald is on every single play. Mike's 51, there's 99. Well, this week I'd do that with him. Just make him feel like every play we're getting four hands at least on you on each and every play. We're not going to let you wreck this game. He needs what? A sack and a half to break. The single he needs, is it 1 or 1.5? Okay, so he needs 1 to tie it, 1.5 to break the single season sack record. You don't want to have that be done at your expense here this weekend. So you'll go for that. And I don't think Josh Allen will have a Brett Favre moment in this one where he takes a dive to give it to Myles Garrett.
I'd rather have him do that than to try to get out of one of them.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, all right, so not everybody loves watching the trenches. I get it. I watch the quarterbacks and I watch the ball most of the time too, but there's some breakdowns on social media of Trent Williams and Myles Garrett going at it a couple weeks ago when the 49ers played the Browns. I mean, you want to talk about a matchup there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's big boy football. And I know, Trent Williams 8 years ago probably would have put up a better fight through that one and maybe doesn't even give up anything. He gave up at least a sack, I know, in that one. And Myles Garrett crushed Brock Purdy on one early on in the game. But regardless, special player. And I'll say this about Myles Garrett. Generally, when you have a guy that is 6'4", 290 pounds, can run a 4.4, generally those guys don't have a very high motor because they never needed it. It's like it just wasn't developed through high school and college. They get to the NFL and maybe they chase that contract and then they shut it down. I have so much respect for this dude because generally they're eliminated from the playoffs at this point of the season. And he plays, I mean, he goes after field goals each and every time. His relentless effort to me is special. I've never met him in person. I would just assume I'd get along with a dude like that. If to have that amount of talent and all the tangibles, and then bring that type of work ethic, wow! I'm extremely impressed by him.
Eric, thanks for the time as always. We're up against the break, so we'll step aside and catch up with you next week. I'll see you up in Cleveland.
All right, sounds good. Looking forward to it. You guys have a great week.